the fate.
This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Tells me when you'll feel Memphis.
Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in film, Devin. And today, we're here to give our thoughts and insights on The Mandalorian Season 3. Technically, this is covering episodes 2 through 8, but I feel like we're just going to be talking about the season as a whole, as we were not able to cover this week to week just because there's been so many movies out right now, and it's hard to keep up with all this stuff. And on the back half of this episode, I will be covering the 4K Blu-ray of All-Star Superman. We have another home entertainment review here for you guys, so we're going to partner these two up and just, let the juices flow all together. But before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin, we're finally here. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. How's your week been, buddy?
It's going. Just got back from the gym with Jared. We were pumping some iron. Always a good time.
Jared pumping iron? That doesn't belong in the same sentence.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
It's very, very weird. I wasn't sure. Jared never struck me as a person who's like, let's go to the gym. But I'm glad that, he's getting that exercise in. You guys work out often?
Yeah, we've been on a bit of a grind here these past few weeks. He just hits me up whenever he's in the neighborhood because I got a Planet Fitness right there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Devin lives literally right. It's walking distance. So did you walk today or did you drive?
I did walk today. It was actually in the 50s today, so not as cold as it has been.
That's shorts weather for Ohio for you, though.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's so funny every time you hear it's going to be in the 50s. Oh, it's going to be the 60s. It's like, I can actually wear shorts today. But yeah. Play any video games lately, or you just been chilling, watching Ted Lasso, maybe? You caught up on that?
I still need to watch that latest episode, but as far as games, I've been grinding through Atomic Heart. It's a fun and pretty game, but the story is just pretty weird.
It's pretty weird, yeah. So I didn't realize you were still playing that. I have recently... haven't been watching, outside of obviously The Mandalorian, Ted Lasso, now that The Mandalorian's kind of gone. I haven't really watched too much, kind of just been watching a lot of reruns, been busy, like I said, packing and getting stuff together. I did beat Super Mario Odyssey actually earlier today, so that was a lot of fun.
Good old New Donk City.
It was fun, man. Oh my gosh. I don't think I've had that much fun with a Mario game in a very, very long time. But, they're not particularly long anyway. It's a platform and they can only be so long. But yeah, just, playing it docked and just having a ball with it all together. And I've been playing some Mario Kart 8 as well. So that's been a lot of fun. Getting myself ready for some Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. But other than that, as we mentioned before, this is going to be a spoiler-heavy review of The Mandalorian Season 3 altogether. We did cover Episode 1 a few weeks back, so if you want to listen to our spoiler-free thoughts on Episode 1 of Season 3, you can definitely do so in the podcast description of this episode, or you can kind of just scroll back a little bit and find that episode. But again, this is spoiler heavy for The Mandalorian Season 3 as the final episode, the season finale for season 3, episode 8, aka chapter 24, because they're kind of just going chronologically there, has aired. So we're going to be talking about Mandalorian season 3 as a whole in the first half of this episode. And then, of course, I'll be getting into the home entertainment review on the latter half. So with all that said, we'll be right back after this introduction to The Mandalorian season 3. And we are back with our Mandalorian season 3 spoiler heavy review. Again, if you're not familiar with The Mandalorian, this is created by Jon Favreau, stars Giancarlo Esposito, Pedro Pascal, and no longer Gina Carano. She is out of here. So yeah, if I'm assuming if you are listening to this, you are caught up on The Mandalorian, but I just like to introduce the cast. So what we're going to do for this section, we're going to get into our initial reactions first. Just overall, that'll kind of just be our small little non-spoiler section. Then we're going to get into our spoilers, which is, going to be the meat and potatoes of the section. Then we'll give our final thoughts and our ratings for season 3 of The Mandalorian. So I'm going to pass it over to Devin so he can give his initial thoughts on this season of The Mandalorian. So take it away, buddy.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about the season as a whole is just kind of uneven. Like, it just feels like there wasn't much direction given for the series in the third season. Like, the first 2 seasons, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. They knew the story they wanted to tell, and they knew the adventure that our 2 main characters were going on. But for this one, it feels like they were winging it. In the same way that in the Book of Boba Fett series, Mando had his own episodes and he just kind of took over the series. It feels similar to what happened here with Bo-Katan kind of taking over from Mando in his own series. But the main difference being that the Book of Boba Fett series kind of needed that help, but I don't think the Mando series necessarily does need that help. So it just feels like he took a back seat for a good portion of the season. There's some storylines that didn't really pay off. I know we talked about that very strange side quest episode, and I mean, I guess there was a kind of a payoff, but definitely not really, seemingly. Like there's some clone stuff, but I don't think it's what anybody was really hoping for from that plot line.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. As far as my initial reactions go, they kind of align with Devin. I thought this was a solid season altogether. With obviously, there's a bit of rough patches altogether. I believe the episode in question you were talking about was that episode 3 or 4 of season 3?
Episode 3, and then also episode 6 was also very strange and disliked.
Oh, the one with
the Jack Black episode.
Jack Black and Lizzo and Back to the Future. Yeah, all that. So, yeah, I mean, I do agree, with with season 1 and 2, they had more of a clear path. And it feels like for season 3, I don't think it's like an experimental season, but I personally didn't mind the Bo-Katan stuff because she is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. So I always enjoy seeing her go through her journey. I know that, this show is called The Mandalorian, but this season really deals with the reclaiming of Mandalore for Bo-Katan. And obviously, the things that we towards the end when it comes to like the season finale. I think it was a good finale, but there's a few things, especially with Moff Gideon, but as a season as a whole, I thought it was pretty solid. The uneven episode for me, because I liked episode 3 just because it was like, we're just taking just a bit of a break from Mandalorian, with that whole cloning thing, but I
just think it's crazy. That episode is an hour and the finale is like 30 minutes. Like, that's just insane to me.
Oh, it was an hour. That's right. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, I mean, the season's been fine. Definitely not as memorable as season 2 or season 1. But I remember people were talking about how season 1 felt like a video game. So it's like, you can't win either way. But, the characters we meet along the way, some are interesting, some are not. I can't really say season 3 has like necessarily stuck with me, but I did like the journey of trying to reclaim Mandalore. I love that we got to see more Bo-Katan because she is a very interesting character, but it feels as if, like Devin said, for the Book of Boba Fett, they were kind of just biding their time until we got to the Return of the Mandalorian. Obviously, I think that was chapter 5 when that was like the highest rated episode of that season for Boba Fett. But for the Mandalorian, I think they kind of messed themselves up a little bit, especially for this ending or season finale of season 2 when Luke Skywalker comes in. Now people, especially for this finale, we're probably expecting some type of cameo or some other crazy, cameo appearance from another Star Wars character. I mean, I usually say that like the worst thing that happened to the Mandalorian, like personally to me, and not saying that like, oh, it's a bad thing. It's just something that probably should not have happened was the Luke Skywalker thing that happened in season 2, because that undercut like everything that was happening afterwards. And it's like, well, okay.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the turning point from the first season, and then even most of the second season was self-contained adventures, just bounty hunting with Jin and Grogu. Like, they're just having their own adventure. But then they obviously had such a huge hit on their hand that they kind of trying to merge Mandalorian into the greater Star Wars storyline and bringing everything together instead of just keeping it self-contained like it was because of its popularity.
That, and I mean, remember all of the announcements we got at Star Wars Celebration that Dave Filoni is working on a film to help tie the Mandalorian and like the TV universe, or not the TV universe, but the Mandalorian and the films and everything like kind of all together. So it feels like right now they were kind of biding their time for season 3 in order to get to Ahsoka, because that is the next live action Disney Plus.
Yeah, it feels like they're putting a lot of focus onto Ahsoka.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, I am all for that 100%. It sounds amazing, and I'm hoping that it becomes my favorite live action Star Wars series all together, because I absolutely love Ahsoka. But yeah, I will say Mandalorian, he did, Din Djarin did take a bit of a backseat, but I feel like it was more like maybe 60-40 between him and Bo-Katan. I would say Bo-Katan definitely shared her storyline altogether, was focused on around 60% of the time, at least for me. And then it was about 40% for Din Djarin altogether. But yeah, I mean, I thought that, especially the finale, I thought it was fine. Like, a lot of heavy action packs and whatnot. But it does feel like they were biding their time a little bit, and everything that happened with Giancarlo Esposito's character. And I actually wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, the reason why he was cloning, and it's like, oh, okay, so he was making clones of himself, and he wanted his clones to also be Force wielders. But what did you think about that?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a great payoff to have the whole cloning like side story to just be, oh, he just wanted to clone himself. That's all it was. Like, it feels like they were going to take a bigger swing than that. And it just felt weird bringing him back in the first place, for it to just be like the end of one episode and then like the end of the finale. Like, he didn't really have to be here. It feels like they just forced him because they wanted a big bad.
Yeah, and also, I mean, is he dead? Because, I mean, we see him get, engulfed by fire, but we don't really see what I thought there was going to be, at least some kind of post-credit scene for the finale, everything leading up.
I mean, I'm sure he could have stored off a clone somewhere, unless he was dumb enough to put all of his eggs in one basket, one chip.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was cool to see him back, but yeah, it felt like this season didn't necessarily have like an overarching big bad. And I don't think it necessarily needed to. Like I said, I enjoyed everything with Bo-Katan, you know, trying to reclaim Mandalore, trying to bring together the two halves of a coin when it comes to the culture of Mandalore, where you have the people who follow the old way and then the new way. I was like, okay, you know, Bo-Katan walks both lives.
Yeah, I really liked everything with like the Mandalore family, the Man Fam.
Yeah.
Like the big beefy boys and the armorer just having adventures, saving each other. Whenever it was the big group of Mandalorians on screen, it was always a cool part of this series.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, you see them flying around with their jetpacks and whatnot. They got all their toys, you know, their Beskar armor. But yeah, I mean, the more that we talk about it, it feels like season 3. I don't want to say it was empty because there were nice story beats, especially when Din officially adopts Grogu. So now it's Din Grogu as a Mandalorian, and it feels like he's
officially Daddy Pedro, like always. We didn't get to see his face this season, though. Kind of sad. He didn't unmask this season.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see his face altogether because, I mean, even was it Bill Burr's character? And I actually wanted to ask you about the, you know, since Bill Burr, he was a cameo, really quick. I want to pivot over to the other cameos we got. Those 2 episodes you said that felt out of place. For me, it was definitely the latter half episode with Jack Black and Lizzo. I mean,
yeah, that one had the worst reactions. It's just, I mean, I guess I'm glad they kind of put all 3 into one episode to get them out of the way, but it just doesn't fit. And the overall story of that episode was just so random.
I would have thought that Jack Black fits in Star Wars. I think he does, but you need to give him the right role. But I think his role was fine.
If you see Jack Black, you're gonna think, "Oh, it's Jack Black." Like I feel like he had to be in makeup or something.
Yeah, something like that. But that whole, it was kind of like a very Blade Runner-esque episode. And, you know, Bo-Katan and Din are kind of like running around trying to figure out who's hacking all these droids to, you know, disobey their masters. And, you know, it was okay. But I will say when the season finale came today, as of March 19th, 2023, today, it didn't really feel like it was the end of the season. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, you know, do you think what would have not necessarily saved this season, but what could they have done differently that what would have made you been like, man, like that was a great season? Like, would it have been the runtime of the episodes, more episodes, or just character development kind of shifted around between, you know, Din and Bo-Katan, or I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think it's a bad finale by any means. It's definitely not going to blow anyone away. I don't feel like. I think there were definitely some rumors that they were going to throw in Thrawn at the end, even if it was like a post-credit scene type of thing.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, so just kind of something to set up the future, because that's kind of the biggest issue with the season is that we don't really have a path for Grogu and Jin. Like they're just kind of floating along. We don't really know what the future holds for them.
Right. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you as well, like, you know, since we're kind of talking about the ending, you know, obvious spoiler alert, you know, Din comes in and saves the day, saves baby Grogu. Well, first, now Din Grogu saves them from the fire with the Force and whatnot. But yeah, it kind of ends where, you know, it's like, oh yeah, he wants to help. Din wants to help out the New Republic. It's like, okay, that's cool. And then it just ends with him, you know, almost not necessarily living like the retired life, but you know, he's just chilling at his new place, it's his house, his dwelling, and Grogu's kind of just playing along, and that's pretty much it. Like you said, we don't really get anything else. I thought we were going to get at least some type of post-credit scene where I'm like, okay, there's no way that Giancarlo Esposito's character is just, you know, Moff Gideon is gone. Like, I mean, yeah, like they beat him. But I was like, okay, like he just fell into a fire. Like, really? Like, we're going to do this again, like they did with The Last Jedi with Gwendolyn Christie's character. And it's like you just never hear or see from them again because you don't technically see a body afterwards. But I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, it feels like they were just trying to buy their time until Ahsoka. But even when the season finale, not the season finale, I'm sorry, when the season premiere dropped, it just, I don't know, it just didn't feel like, hey, like, you know, The Mandalorian is back. Like it felt like for season 2.
Yeah, definitely. This season as a whole just really hasn't hit as hard as the first two.
And I don't know what it is. I can't really say it's the writing. I think it's just the direction of these episodes. But I'll pass it over to Devin one more time. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention? I know we've kind of just been, you know, rambling here for a bit, but was there any other plot details or anything you wanted to mention before we get into our final thoughts and our ratings?
I did want to give a shout out to episode 4, The Foundling. Possibly my favorite of the season, just because it was so cool to see the Ahmad Best's redemption, the Jar Jar Binks actor getting to come back and get his spotlight. It was really cool to see him save Grogu at the very beginning from Order 66. That was a really cool way to tie that all in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I don't know if I necessarily, like, I have a lot of favorite moments this season, but I don't have like a favorite episode. Maybe when Din goes to Mandalore for the first time and, you know, finds out that, hey, it's not cursed. This planet's not cursed, where he goes to redeem himself. But yeah, I would say there's definitely moments within this season that I liked, but looking back or thinking back, I'm not like, man, that was like a really, really good episode of television. Like, and then of course Star Wars television, but it is what it is. But yeah, Ahmed Best, that was a great scene.
And then that also leads to the rumor I was seeing that Anakin during Order 66 might have been going after Grogu all along. That definitely is interesting.
It definitely is. I'm just trying to figure out now. It's like, okay, so Moff Gideon is dead. So, you know, Grogu, obviously he's a force wielder, but they said he has some kind of special blood. But it's like, that was kind of lackluster, I feel like.
Yeah,
like,
we also forgot to mention the Darksaber just being obliterated.
Right.
Which was this kind of unceremonious in a way. It just feels like he just snapped it away.
Yeah. I kind of prefer that being gone because it's just, I mean, I was listening to or watching Heavy Spoilers review about it, and he was saying how it's probably more of like a good omen that the Darksaber is now destroyed because, you know, in the past it was, oh, whoever wields this will be the leader of Mandalore, no matter if they're right for the job or not. You know, they will be the leader of Mandalore if they earn it in combat. But Paul from Heavy Spoilers was saying that, I mean, it's nice that that was destroyed because they clearly know who their leader is, and that is Bo-Katan, because she has, you know, she's been literally everywhere, and she knows how both of these clans operate, and you don't really need a Darksaber to do that, to be like, hey, I'm the one. Like, it's more of a symbolism thing, definitely, but I definitely agree with Paul's take there when it comes to it being destroyed. But I do agree with you as well, where it's like, there wasn't like, oh my gosh, like it's destroyed. There was just like, oh, crack. And then it kind of just boom. Like they focused on it for like a second and then like.
Yeah, they could have focused on it a bit longer because it is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it was nice. I will say during the finale, it was pretty cool that Din and Bo-Katan were kind of like tag teaming, like, you know, tabbing each other in and tabbing each other out. That was pretty sweet, I will say.
And IG-11 Grogu.
Yeah.
IG-12.
Yeah.
That was cool.
It's so funny because if you think about it, obviously Grogu like is like a puppet himself. So it's like a puppet controlling a puppet altogether.
A puppet puppeting a puppet.
Yeah, a puppet. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, let's get into our final thoughts and our ratings here because we'll be here all day if we just, you know, end up talking about this forever. and then we'll probably get into like other Star Wars shenanigans. But Devin, what are your final thoughts and ratings on season 3 of The Mandalorian?
Yeah, final thoughts, like I mentioned in the opening, just kind of an uneven season, it feels like. A couple episodes really didn't fit in, and overall, like the story of Grogu and Jin just felt like a bit of an afterthought here. We don't really know where they're going next, and it just feels like I'm missing personally the self-contained nature of the first season and most of the second season, where it's just focused on the bounty hunting duo just going on adventures together and learning and growing and not having to build out the entire Star Wars universe within the show. But other than that, I mean, I didn't hate the season. Definitely the worst of the 3 so far. As far as a rating goes, I'd probably give it like a 70 overall. It wasn't like bad by any means, but there's just a lot of issues where there's just something missing, and I just feel like they tried to do too much this season instead of focusing on what got them started.
I definitely agree with you there. It also feels like they're trying to retcon a few things, especially, after everything that happened with The Rise of Skywalker, especially when it comes to the cloning. A lot of people thought that it was going to be like a Snoke type situation. I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. But no.
Yeah, answers for Palpatine coming back, possibly.
Yeah, it's like, nope, it's just Moff Gideon wanting to create, clones of himself that are force wielding so that he'll effectively be like the face of the Empire. And like, they didn't even go like much deep into it, but yeah, for my final thoughts, they kind of align pretty much with Devin's. Not a forgettable season, but definitely not the best. I feel like if they would have just really focused on the whole Bo-Katan thing, I mean, they did, but they didn't, because there was so much else going on. It felt like they were trying to juggle a lot of things. But definitely, I didn't hate the season, but compared to the other two, it's definitely not the strongest season that we've gotten. And like Devin said, it's a very ambiguous ending. We don't really know if there's going to be a season 4 or if this is just, hey, this is where The Mandalorian ends for now. And they're just going to focus on Ahsoka and Acolyte, I believe, as well as, everything else that they announced at Star Wars Celebrations in London this year. I believe within the next 2 years, it'll be in Japan. So not next year, but the following year in 2025. But for my rating, I would give it a 75. I usually, if you listen to this podcast before, I usually try to give it like a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, just because, making movies and TV shows are very, very difficult, because there were a lot of great moments. It's just nothing outside of like great moments really stuck with me. And because, season 2 was just so freaking good. But like I said before, I definitely feel like them bringing back Luke Skywalker definitely hurt the expectations for season 3, because, how do you top that? You brought in Luke Skywalker, and canonically, I guess it does make sense that he would be the one looking for Grogu, because he was trying to rebuild the Jedi Order during that time, in between, that and The Last Jedi throughout his life. But it's like, but you can't top Luke Skywalker outside of like Darth Vader or something like that. But, we kind of already had our Darth Vader figure with Moff Gideon. But yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It was an okay season. Not terrible, but definitely not like, nothing to write home about. So we have a score of a 70 from Devin and a score from myself of 75. So the overall podcast score is going to be a 72.5 out of 100 from us at the Film Optix podcast. And that is a wrap on this section of today's episode. If you like what you heard on today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. And as always, make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. So with all that said, we're going to get into our home entertainment review. I will be reviewing for All-Star Superman, the 4K edition that just dropped a few days ago. And we'll be right back after this introduction to our All-Star Superman 4K Blu-ray review.
Superman's Journal. Final entry. I'm dying. My turn. My cells are breaking down. I'm running out of time.
Welcome to the new world. Lay down your weapons and you won't be hurt.
They only have one chance to save the world. My last adventure is about to begin.
And we are back with our All-Star Superman 4K Blu-ray review. This copy was provided to me by Warner Brothers. So thank you to Warner Brothers for sending me a review copy for the purposes of this podcast episode. So the way I usually break these down, if you are new to this segment, I like to cover a few Blu-ray reviews here or there to spice up things on the channel. So the way that I usually break down these episodes is that I go through my initial reactions of the movie, and then I go through the picture quality and of course the audio and the special features, so on and so forth, all in culmination to let you know if this is worth adding to your Blu-ray collection. So this movie is directed by Sam Liu and is written by Dwayne McDuffie. And the original release date of this movie was February 22nd in 2011. So it's been over 10 years since this movie has had a physical media release. Like I said, this is the first time that this movie is coming to the 4K medium, which I'm very excited to dive in about. And the runtime for this movie is only an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm very surprised at that because with this movie, what this movie does, it's pretty much a culmination of everything that Superman stands for and is a power-packing, fantastic DC animated film. I've covered a lot of other DC animated films here on the podcast, and I gotta say, they definitely do not make them like they used to. This movie was just awe-inspiring. And like I said before, this movie is starting to change my mind about how I view Superman as a hero and as well as just a character all around. This movie has heart, it has laughs, and it kind of just gives you everything you've ever wanted in a Superman movie or just a comic book movie altogether. I will say that the runtime is a little bit short, but I know they were pulling a lot from the All-Star Superman comics, and there are a lot of issues within that run, and it's kind of hard to, bring everything together into an hour and 15-minute movie. But for what they did, I feel like it was done beautifully altogether. The score is immaculate, and this is probably my favorite Superman story that I've witnessed thus far because we need more stories like this. And this makes me very excited for James Gunn's run of Superman that will be debuting, I believe it was 2025, for the new revamped DC Studios. So as you can tell by my initial reactions, I absolutely love this movie, but let me give you a little bit of snippet of what it is actually about for people who have not yet witnessed this story of Superman like myself. Again, this originally dropped in 2011, so it has been over 10 years since, we have seen this movie come out in any type of home media release, but it's a story about a jealous-ridden Lex Luthor. Shocker. He has this mastermind elaborate plot to kill the Man of Steel, and it works by poisoning the solar radiation in Superman's body, aka his overexposure to the sun, and it leaves with Superman finding out that he is dying and he only has a few weeks to live. And that kind of creates the contained story of All-Star Superman. A lot of things happen with him and Lois. Of course, Lex Luthor is there, as well as a few other enemies from Superman's Rogues Gallery all together. But it is just a beautiful story, and I'm going to shut up now about the initial reactions because I could talk about this all day. But let's get into the picture quality of this movie, because again, it's been since 2011 since we've seen this guy, and wow, it is super, super crazy how this picture has aged so well. The animation has aged so well over the years, much like the treatment that Batman Year One received on 4K. All-Star Superman provides a good foundational upgrade to the brand new format that is 4K. The animation here has aged so well, and I'm very surprised about how breathtaking some of these shots are. A lot of these shots of All-Star Superman are ripped directly from the comics as I was watching through the special features, and you could just tell the care that was put in to this film when it came to transferring this to 4K, and I think it really pays off. When it comes to the audio, I will say that it feels a bit muffled at times. Again, that actually might be to my setup with my soundbar. It is more on the older side, so I have been looking to upgrade, but for the most part, the audio track is very engaging with some room to improve. As I mentioned, there are a few moments where, like, let's say an escape hatch has blown and it didn't really register as strongly as it could, even with the new Dolby Atmos mix that is a part of this package. But overall, it is a nice upgrade from what we have from the standard Blu-ray. But again, you know, it's just the audio, it was okay. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't bad either. It was just fine. When it comes to the Special K, there are a few new extras on the 4K disc only, including an all-star adaptation, which runs around 7 minutes. It kind of just breaks down the director, the composer, Christopher Drake, as well as the producer, Bruce Timm, talking about the character design of All-Star Superman and how everything came to be, which I thought was pretty awesome. And everyone on this team eats, breathes, and loves Superman for who he is. And I will say, when it comes to the special features, you know, nowadays, there isn't a lot of special features that come with 4K discs, unless it is like a collector's edition of some sort. But for what you're getting here, outside of the few new extras of the All-Star adaptation and the All-Star salute to the Silver Age, which again, that also runs about 7 minutes, you're also getting like an audio commentary, and you're getting a few of the creative flow commentaries when it comes to this disc. A lot of these are returning extras that were on the standard Blu-ray that originally came out some odd years ago. And outside of that, there's really nothing too new outside of the returning extras. The two new extras, like I mentioned, the All-Star adaptation and the All-Star salute to the Silver Age of Superman. So it's pretty much the standard Blu-ray package, if you're able to find that, with a few new extras thrown in. So, I mean, you know, you take what you get with these animated movies. They usually don't come with a lot of special features all together. But with all that said, I think that All-Star Superman is a definite pickup for anyone who is a Superman fan, for anyone who is looking to get into the character of Superman. I think that you should pick this up. It'll run you around $25 on Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, Target, you name it. Of course, the 4K package comes with a 4K disc, the Blu-ray disc, and a digital code for you to redeem for yourself or for you to gift to a friend. So with all that said, my reaction or my take walking out of this, like I said, this is a must pick up for your Blu-ray collection if you are a massive comic book fan, if you're a DC fan, Superman fan, or again, looking to get into the character, because I truly believe that this movie embodies everything that the character stands for, who Clark Kent is, who Superman is, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful time to watch. It's not very long, again, an hour and 15 minutes. If you got some free time during the afternoon, you can kind of just pop this on during the weekend and be like, man, that was a really good movie. And definitely support animated feature films as much as possible, because I try to do that myself, as I've covered multiple DC animated films here on the podcast. Again, thank you to Warner Brothers for sending me a review copy for the purposes of this podcast episode. So with all that said, if you like what you heard on today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And with all that said, that is a wrap on today's episode as a whole. We are finally done. We got a two-parter done. Again, I hope you guys enjoy this, because I really love doing this for you guys. But thank you for listening to our show. If you enjoyed what you listened here today, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay in the know. I'm your host, Christian, signing off, and we hope to see you guys in the next one.